on his video. He said, if you're going to start your OSCP, first thing you need to do is apologize to your wife, your friends, your family, and your loved ones, because this will consume you for the next however many days or months until you get this exam. And it was so true, right? Going into work, doing work, labbing on the side, going through the manuals, going through the stuff, coming home, spending another 2, 3, 4 hours at it, going to sleep, waking up, rinse, wash, repeat.
Hi, I'm Kyser Clark, and welcome to The Hacker's Cache, the show that decrypts the secrets of offensive security one bite at a time. Every week, I invite you into the world of ethical hacking by interviewing leading offensive security practitioners. If you are a penetration tester, bug bounty hunter, red teamer, or blue teamer who wants to better understand the modern hacker mindset, whether you are new or experienced, this show is for you. Hello. Welcome to the Hacker's Cache. My name is Kyser Clark. I have over 6 years of experience in cybersecurity, and I currently work as a full-time penetration tester, and I'm here to help you grow your hacking and cybersecurity knowledge. And I have an exciting announcement today. So for those who have been keeping up with the show and watching my content, you probably know that I failed the OSWA several times, and I'm happy to announce that I finally passed it after 3 failed attempts. So I passed my 4th try, and I also passed the TCM Security Practical Web Pen Test Associate, formerly known as the Practical Junior Web Tester. So I failed that one too on the first try, and then I got it on the second try. And then I also passed a third certification recently. I did the CompTIA Security X beta in the summertime, which was like 6 months ago, and I finally gave me my results, and it was a pass. So 3 certifications came my way all at one time, and it's super exciting. That brings up to a total of 16 certs. Today, I have Mike Ortiz, who has 24 years of experience in tech, IT, and cybersecurity. He currently works as a red teamer, and for education, he has a bachelor's degree in cybersecurity and is currently working on his master's degree in cybersecurity. For certifications, he has the red team lead, the OSEP, the CRTO, the OSCP, CAS Plus, 2 Cisco certified specialist certifications, the CCNA, the CompTIA Net Plus, and the Sec Plus. So, Mike, thank you so much for taking your time and doing this recording with me. Go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience and walk through your background.
Hi, thank you. That was quite the introduction. Thank you for having me. Hopefully, I can tell you a little bit about my journey, and hopefully someone out there will find some value in that, and hopefully it'll help them on their path as well. So for me, I'm like you said, 24 years in the field. I really started in uh, the early 2000s. Actually, before the 2000s, when I was still in high school, I was doing a little bit of IT work there. I was part of a program where they were basically taking kids and running them through a VOTEC-like course where we're kind of assisting and helping the IT administrator of the school at the time. Shout out to you, Mike Patitucci. You really were one of those defining moments, forces in my life. So thank you for that. Um, and did that for a couple years, right? While I was there, learning, basic computer skills, basic administration. We were doing things like unlocking accounts, remapping users to printers, helping the teachers with some of their projectors and peripherals and things like that. Um, After high school, I got out and immediately went into the Marines, where lo and behold, I get selected into the 4066 field at the time. The MOS was Small Computer System Specialist. So basically doing IT for the Marine Corps. At the time, it was very fledgling. It was they were they were really trying to figure out what they were going to do with these data Marines. They called us data at the time. It took a bit of growing pains, couple MOSs, collapses, and mergers and things like that, to where we finally got our footing and have evolved into what is known as the cyber workforce, cyber Marines MOS today. In my time, it was still data, so tactical data specialist, data chief was my MOSs. At which point I got out of the Marines in 2012 and immediately started contracting. So ended up overseas a lot, Middle East, Central Asia. Did a couple of years in Afghanistan, a couple of years in Djibouti, some time in the UAE, back to Afghanistan, off and on, until I finally came back and repatriated back in 2019, working over in CENTCOM headquarters on MacDill. Was there for a couple of years. Left there and joined the fight over in UCOM. I was working with a company that we specialized in doing integration work and services overseas, specifically for our Eastern European partner nations and allies. So we were doing a lot of tech refreshes, perimeter defense, building out CSOCs, building out security architecture for those countries because they were under threat. And as we're only as strong as our partners, so we were spending a lot of time engaging with them. Same with some of our partner nations down in South America as well. So I was kind of overseeing several teams that would manage and take those projects from cradle to grave, as I'm just applying the guiding hand from the architectural technical standpoint, and also going where I'm needed to augment the staff of engineers that I have working with me and for me. Then after that, that landed me here in Arlington, Virginia, where I left Sunnyside, Florida, for freezing Arlington, and working with the Department of State now as part of their red team in their red cell branch.
Hey, I wanted to tell you about my new cybersecurity insider list, where you get raw, unfiltered cybersecurity advice, tips, and hot takes, plus exclusive first looks at my content delivered directly to your inbox every single week. No fluff or spam, just valuable content. Head over to kyserclark.com/newsletter and level up your cybersecurity knowledge today. Once again, that's kyserclark.com/newsletter. There's also a link in the description. All right, now back to the show. All right, Mike, are you ready for the rapid fire questions?
Yeah, let's do it.
So, for those who don't know, for the new audience members, Mike will have 30 seconds to answer 5 questions. If he answers all 5 questions in 30 seconds, he will get a bonus 6 question unrelated to cybersecurity. His time will start as soon as I stop asking the first question. So, here we go. Mike, do you think privacy is dead in the digital age?
No, but you do have to make some trade spaces for convenience.
Is it ever okay to pay the ransomware demands?
No.
Favorite hacker from history?
Ooh, I would say Adrian Lamo.
Most memorable hacking experience?
Oof, getting that fifth flag callback on my OSCP exam.
Most important quality for a hacker?
Curiosity.
We are at 31 seconds, almost 32, so you barely missed it, but that's okay. It's
Oh,
it's a challenge for a reason. If I had to critique you, you explained your first answer a little too much there. If you wouldn't have done that, you would have made it. But it's
okay.
okay that you provide that explanation, because you're absolutely right with it when it comes to privacy. It's dead in the digital age, because there are some things that you have to sacrifice if you want convenience. So it's like a fine line. Like, do you want
Yep.
convenience or do you want privacy? And it's like, well, if you want total privacy, then you make life harder on yourself, and then
Yeah.
um, it's definitely a hard balance. So you know what I'm gonna do? So I'm gonna try something else, something new for this episode. Is there any one of those answers that you want to explain more, or do you want me to pick one?
No, I'll let you. Dealer's choice.
All right, let's do most important quality for a hacker. So you said, what did you say?
Curiosity.
Curiosity. So why do you think it's curiosity?
Yeah, because that's what's going to give you the drive, right? When you're up at 3 a.m. bashing your head against the keyboard, trying to figure out why something isn't working or why something is working, trying to figure out what's the underlying cause of that. that is where that mentality kind of kicks in, right? That drive to keep pushing, and not to sound trite or cliche, but to just keep trying harder, right? Um, that's one of the main defining qualities, really, in just infosec in general. I know a lot of people don't like to be reminded, but cybersecurity is IT, no matter how you slice it. So that same mentality also helps you in the traditional IT roles when you're talking network systems, engineering. Wanting to understand how something works, why it works, all the underlying factors, and then what you can do to make it better, tweak it, or manipulate it, right? And that is where uh, I think that is probably the strongest quality to have. That is also the hardest one. You can't teach that, right? You got to have that innateness in yourself to want to keep pushing, to want to keep discovering, to want to keep churning over all the rocks and flipping all the switches, uh, to figure out, hey, how can I make this system do what I want it to do?
Yeah, yeah, I agree with you. The first thing that comes to my mind is the try harder mantra, like the unwillingness to give in, like,
Yeah.
right. I think that's an incredible uh quality, and I guess that does fall under the curiosity, because you want to know how it works, and you're not going to stop until you figure out how it works.
Yeah.
And so yeah, they all those traits go hand in hand, and I totally agree with you on cybersecurity is under the IT umbrella. Some people, when I first got in the field, I'm like, oh, cybersecurity and IT is not the same. And then I realized, like, oh no, cybersecurity is just a discipline of IT. It falls
Yes.
under IT,
Oh
and
yeah.
a lot of people sometimes forget that.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's important to know. I mean, it's a lot. That's a lot different than a traditional IT role, but it is still a IT role in the grand scheme of things, in
Yeah,
the
yeah. I
bigger
mean,
picture, for sure.
it's absolutely one of the pillars because it was born from IT. Before there was cybersecurity, it was network security or system security, right? And then those kind of, as security became more, I would say, more specialized, more niche, then they needed people to just focus only on that. So we offloaded all the network security stuff, all the system security, to actual cybersecurity. And a lot of people, like, they tend to forget that. Oh, no, no, cybersecurity, we're not IT. You are IT, right? You're just your own branch of IT, or you're still part of the overarching umbrella. Just like IT is under the underarching umbrella of computer science, right?
Mm.
We like to forget that too. We were born from the old graybeards in our time, those guys in the 60s and 70s on the soldering boards and making blips on a screen go left and right. That is where IT came out of. So, it's important to know our history, know your roots, because you can see the lineage all the way through.
Yeah. And when you talk about computer science, and one of the playlists I really liked on YouTube, I don't know if you ever saw it. It's called Crash Course Computer Science. Are you familiar with, like, the Crash Course series?
Is that the one from MIT that they put out?
I don't know if it's from MIT, but Crash
Okay.
Course is like a YouTube channel. They do like Crash Course history, economics, all that stuff. But they have a computer science one, and I thoroughly enjoyed that computer science one because it goes all the way back, like, how
Oh, might have to
computers
check that
came to
out.
be, and it's really good because it introduces, like, IT into, or computer science, in a very casual way. Like, you don't need to be tech savvy to understand it. And when you're going through that playlist, like, I think, like, 95% of the way through, they finally get to cybersecurity, and it's just one episode. You know what I mean? It's just a
Yeah.
piece of the puzzle in the whole grand scheme of things. And that's when I kind of realized, like, oh, there's way more to this.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go ahead and dive into our main discussion. So we're going to talk about red team operations and adversarial threat emulations. And the first question I want to ask you is, what is a critical but often overlooked aspect of red team operations that a lot of people, might not understand about red teaming?
Oh, yeah. That's a great question. So, yeah, one of the things about red teaming is that it's not your traditional pen test, and sometimes the information owners or the system owners, or even the people who are requesting it, don't quite understand exactly what a red team is supposed to be and what it should entail. Um, one of the main defining aspects of red teaming itself is just the timeline and the scale. Where pen testing, you're usually given a very finite set of boundaries. These are your rules of engagement. This is your perimeter. This is what you can touch. This is what's in play, what's not in play, and you're going to be testing it for 2, 3, 4 weeks. And then at the end of that, you're going to write your report, give your out brief, and you move on to the next project. With red teaming, it's a little different. Pen testing, we consider that kind of like smash and grabs. You walk in a jewelry store, you're going to smash all the glass containers. You're going to steal all the jewelry. You're not worried about being sneaky. You're not worried about evasion. You're not worried about getting caught. You just want to get in and get out before the cops arrive. Where in red teaming is that's your more prolonged activity. We're going to sit on your network. We're going to watch it. We're going to take our time. We're going to discover it. Red team engagements can be anywhere from weeks to months to hey, you're doing it quarter by quarter on a yearly based cycle. And what you're doing there is you're pretending to be the bad guy or the bad threats so that when your system does get those threats, it knows how to respond. Um, that is the key point in what we're doing with red teaming. Where pen testing, you're testing that finite box, but with red teaming, you're testing what I like to say, the three P's: the people, the products, and the processes. The people, those are your SOC, your SOC engineers, your SOC watch officers, your analysts, your blue team, your defenders, your cyber defenders, network, whatever your organization has the roles of the watchers who are looking at the dashboards, looking at the logs, looking at the feeds as they come in. The products, of course, is your things like your architecture, your security stack, your IPSs, your IDSs, your SIEM, your XOR orchestration platforms, all of that. That is your products. And then lastly is your processes. Um, your processes are, hey, we have a threat. It's a validated threat. What do we do now? Generally, when we come in a red team engagement, if it's done correctly, the blue team is not going to know we're there. What they're going to see is they're going to see our artifacts. They're going to see our beacons, or maybe not our beacons, but they're going to see some anomalies. Now the question is the process that they've been taught. Do they look at this anomaly and keep clicking, hey, this is good to go, or this is just white noise, or do they take it and they drill down and dig in and see exactly what it is and realize, oh wow, we have a compromise. So that's the important part too, is those processes. What does that watch officer do at 3 a.m. when he sees my beacon accidentally trip one of the EDRs, and he gets a weird alert that he usually doesn't see before? Does he, what does he do from there? And then once they determine that yes, we do have a threat actor in our network, what do they do then? Do they call the white cell? Or obviously they won't call the white cell because they don't know it's part of the exercise. But do they escalate? How do they escalate? Different organizations have different protocols. Crash. Everyone crashes the war room. They stand up a skiff or something like that, and they start taking logs, snapshots, and all that. Like this is the things that red teaming gets to test a lot more so than your standard audit based pen test or vulnerability scan.
I love your analogy with the smash and grab like street robbery, and
Yeah.
then like a red team assessment's like a well planned heist. Like
Oh
that's a
yeah.
really good analogy.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna steal that from you
Yeah.
when
By
I.
all means.
That's a good one. I like that a lot. But yeah, you're right. Like that's absolutely right. Because as a pen tester, I'm not worried about getting caught. I'm just running the scans as long as I can because I'm just trying to test. And there's days where it's like I don't feel like a hacker. I feel more like a QA for IT, honestly, because I'm not being stealthy at all.
Yeah.
And there's times where it's like, man, I don't feel like a hacker because I'm not trying to be stealthy, and which is one of the reasons why I want to start getting into red teaming,
Yeah.
because pen testing is um, less threat actory than a pen test.
Yeah.
So another thing you mentioned, so you mentioned the blue team. You said a good red team is one where you get in, you don't get caught, or you leave little to no trace for the blue team. And when that happens, how does the blue team respond? Like, have you ever had a situation where the blue team they just get like super salty, like, oh my gosh, like why didn't we catch you, or like do they generally find it like helpful?
Yeah, I mean, to borrow from one of my colleagues, he says what we do by nature is adversarial, right? It's always, and what we try and do is we try and control the narrative and change the mindset. Say, look, I'm not here to run in and make you look bad, right? We're here to work together. We're on the same team, right? To sit down, work together, work through these problems, work through these findings, and help you get to the end goal of defense changes in your defense posture, or mitigation remediation strategies, right? It does no good if a red team comes in, craps all over the environment, gets domain dominant, starts spinning up enterprise admins left and right, and then walks away, right? Just like they taught us, when you're going through your pen tester stuff, is like the quality of your work is determined not by what you do, what flags you capture, what boxes you root, but rather by the report you write afterwards, because that is what you're getting paid to do. They need that report because that is what is going to drive policy changes, is also going to drive remediation and mitigation strategies. With the red team is the same. Depending on the type of red team, right? There's the new push now is kind of like I've seen it where engagements are like, okay, we're going to assess you for a week, and then we're going to sit down for a couple of days, and then go back and assess, and back and forth. Ideally, the larger enterprises have their own internal red team that can do this on a continuous cycle, so that you're not just having a team come in once every 18 months for your SOC 2 compliance or whatever compliancy your insurance company needs, but you're taking it serious enough that you are having a threat emulator that can work through these problems with your blue team side by side. Sometimes there's benefit to the blue team and the red team locking themselves in the same conference room, bringing out their laptop and say, okay, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to test this. You're going to see what you see, and develop those alerting strategies for those indicators of compromise and those artifacts, and helping them develop their detection analysis stuff, so that when Cozy Bear is knocking at the door, Lazarus Group is trying to get in, your equipment, your people, and your product or your policies are not seeing it for the first time.
Yeah, yeah, I like what you said there about the you're not here to make people look bad because if I was a blue teamer, I would take a lot of pride in not having any breaches or quickly detecting them and responding to them and mitigating them ASAP. I would take a lot of pride in my work, which I take a lot of pride in my red team work too. But I feel like if a red team came in and just got in and out without me knowing, I would be like, my whole life would be like, dude, what have I been doing my whole career? I've been working on this, so I could imagine like it's got to be hard for a blue teamer to go through that. But if you do go through that, then like that is definitely a learning opportunity, and it just makes you better in the end. And I mean, there's probably got to be for every blue teamer, there's got to be a point in time where like before they learn, like, man, like how did I let this through? So
Yeah,
like
yeah,
you said, like when it comes to red teaming and pen testing, it's the report that you write, and it's like delivering the bad news is not easy sometimes. And, you'll
yeah,
find some severe critical vulnerabilities, and like you got to kind of like you got to talk about like what they did good and stuff, because it's their baby. They worked really
oh
hard
yeah,
on that network, and it's you got to break the news to them in the best way possible. You want to be direct with them. You don't want to let sweep vulnerabilities on the rug or like downplay them or anything. But at the same time, it's like you don't want to like put them down as a person. And be like,
exactly.
you suck. You don't want to say that.
Yeah, yeah,
It's definitely a graceful thing that you have to do as a red team in it. Which is why communication and soft skills is incredibly important in this field. Even though we are, as red teamers, probably the most technically savvy, or one of the most technically savvy people in the industry, we have to have very good communication skills.
yep, absolutely.
So you got into red teaming without being a pen tester first, and I want to know what you did and how you did. to do that? Because for me, I was like, if I want to be a red teamer, I got to be a pen tester first, and that's what I did. I'm a pen tester now, and
Yeah.
slowly I work my way towards a red teamer. So how did you make that happen?
Yeah, so it was one of those things that a lot of being in the right place at the right time. I think a lot of the stuff that I was doing within my career. So towards the end, so traditionally I come from the network background, right? Even back in my military days, I was always geared towards the more the networking side. A lot of tactical data. We were doing a lot of like satcom shots, muck shots, VSAT shots. So bringing in multiple network nodes, putting in equipment to push, FMV and video feeds down to trucks on the go, and all that in that tactical comms world. All kind of play together, and it's all IP based, network based, right? So for me at the time is I don't want nothing to do with cybersecurity. Why? Because DoD cybersecurity at the time was all GRC people. It was all governance, compliance. It wasn't even cybersecurity. It was information assurance. So words matter and words have meaning, and those titles definitely they take a different type of person that traditionally for a long time was known to be non-technical, policy focused, right? Yeah, I can grab your average dod cyber workforce IA person, and they can spit me out all the different domains of the CISP and what it means. But if I put them behind a keyboard and put them on a Linux shell, they wouldn't know what to do. And to me, that was always like, it was always like, yeah, no, we're not those kind of people, right? So hands on the keyboard, consistently, skilling up, leveling up. A lot of what we started doing was shifting the focus to where we determined that, hey, our security posture is not working, right? Perimeter defense is no longer working. Why? Because when we put all of our focus at the perimeter, we're not we're not paying attention to what's happening when our number one attack surface, which is always the user, right? So out of that, growing pains, things like zero trust architecture, security stacks, SSL break and inspect. A lot of those things kind of came out of the network world where, micro segmentation, macro segmentation, right? Large groups of nodes, and then splitting those even further down into granular, you know, single host VLANs, things like that, depending on the level of things. And a lot of that came out of the network world, right? I know nowadays a lot of these are buzzwords, but when you're talking, 10 years ago, it wasn't. It was the cutting edge. When you're talking about VXVLAN implementations and zero trust architecture and SSL break and inspect, like those were the things that were hot at the time. Things. So a lot of that was building out security stacks, building out large clusters that can take traffic that the users are generating and not only segment but also inspect it, right? Inspect it and make sure it's on the up and up. So when you're doing those types of things, right? If I tell you, hey, I just built you this massive, enterprise-wide security stack that's going to be able to, uh, log, inspect, break apart, inspect, deep packet inspection, run it through playbooks, run it through analysis, run it through all these security tools. Then I say, hey, but trust me, it works. You know, how do you validate that? How do you vet that when it comes time to FOC or it comes time to delivery and turnover? So working on the E&I side of things, which is the engineering implementation, we come in, we have a defined product, we're putting it together, we're documenting everything, and then we're turning it over to the guys who do the O&M, and that's the operations and maintenance, right? So a lot of that, before we could turn it over, we had to prove that it worked. Well, how do you prove a lot of these work? Well, you start getting those playbooks. Before MITRE came out, it was the cyber kill chain. So we were taking things out of the cyber kill chain, we were taking things out of the CVEs, we were testing them, we were running them. And hey, that's how I kind of got into the offensive security world, is because these things that we were doing natively, inherently already, um, just to test and validate and vet that, hey, our equipment's working, our tools are working, right? Everything's working as intended or as needed. Was really, that is how we got into that. And of course, where when you're actually on the keyboard side of things, and you are on the, I don't want to say you're not on the blue team, because even the blue team is separated from what we do. We're the infrastructure guys, right? We're building your pathways, we're handling your campus networks, your architectures, we're doing your whole entire enterprise, all the branches and extensions. um, then the blue team is tasked with hardening and defending or monitoring, and then the red team will come in. But at the time, DoD didn't really have a red team. We weren't really. In fact, it was DoD's. I can't tell you how many times I got told, no, no, no. Especially when we're doing a lot of like foreign military sales, FMS stuff. We're with foreign nations, partner nations, and allies. Like, no, no, no. We don't train offensive capability. Yes, I get it, but this is not training offensive capability. This is testing defensive capability, because you can't test without that op 4, right? You can't you can't play, do the little war game, like when you're in the military and they say, hey, you're in a fob, you're defending it, right? I don't know how much the Air Force does it, but we do a little more. Like, you always need that op 4, because if not, then your training value is not, it's not real, it's not realistic enough, right? If we're gonna train like we fight, right? In order to fight like we train, we got to train like we fight. So and on the marine side of things, it just makes sense. Like, someone has to be the adversary, someone has to push the buttons, and someone has to check all the locks on the door and check the windows of that. Hey, everyone's so focused on the front side, on that perimeter defense, who's watching from the inside. So that is how I kind of got into that. um, that was just the first phase. The second phase really was COVID. COVID came, had a lot of time on my hands. I was sitting at CENTCOM. I had I had I had just attempted my CCIE 6 months prior. Then, because I said, okay, I'm going to move back to the States, I'm not going to sit for it again. A new version was going to come out right that year, so I was like, okay, I'm not going to study anymore. I'll just take a long break. New version comes out, I'll study that and go attain my CCIE, which, the CCIE is the pinnacle of the networking field. So I went and did it once. I passed 2 of the 3 portions, but I failed the last portion, so I just ran out of time. So I was like, okay, I'm just done. New job, just relocated. Let me not drill down in the studying too hard. I'll catch up later. Well, never came. So that year, I came back stateside in I want to say June, July. That February, March, we were in COVID lockdown. Cisco delayed the start of the new exam. Then you can't just take the new exam; you have to wait for the new exam materials. All that got screwed around. So here I am, sitting on night shift in CENTCOM. A lot of time on my hands. Didn't need, a lot of certs out there. So I said, hey, you know what? My buddy that was sitting next to me, uh, he was like, oh, you're doing a lot of this stuff, maybe you might want to give it a go. And it was the OSCP. And I said, oh, there's a lot of this stuff is stuff that, I already do. I already knew Metasploit because we were doing it when we were building out CSOCs. I already knew about, a lot of that stuff. But it's like, you know what? Yeah, you know what? Let me go and get it. You know why? My number one reason is because every time cyber division would come over and complain about something I was doing on the network, I would tell them, okay, look, I understand your Nessus scan is telling you XYZ, but this is a Cisco router, not a BSD device. I can't patch this. I can't remediate this. I have to wait. It's a closed system. So a lot of the times is, as networkers, we want to make connections. We want to bring in networks. We want to bring new links online, get new circuits up, get new routes going in. Bring up new enclaves. And then the C division or cyber division are the ones that come and say, no, 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 hold on. You got to get it STIGged. You got to get it scanned. You got to get it documented. And for good measure, right? Because we can't all just live by the seat of our pants. But sometimes they would come in and they would just push that ball a little too far. And a lot of the times I say, look, you sit there with your CISSP, you're telling me something is not vulnerable, what I'm doing, and I'm telling you it doesn't apply, but yet you have no understanding why it's not vulnerable or why it doesn't apply here, because all you're doing is just regurgitating a Nessus scan or something you read about in the CISP or a NIST 800 section, and all that's valuable, and I don't want to take away from that. But when that becomes your sole focus and you lose sight of the mission and lose sight of what's happening on the ground, right? First of all, everything is poemable, right? To a certain point. As long as the owner can accept that risk, and as long as you show them all the cards, hey, this is what we have to do. Yes, it's risky, but here is the risk matrix chart that will allocate to that, right? Then you can make that informed decision. The problem is the GRC governance guys sometimes don't understand all the cards on the table. All they know is, well, this is a risk, we can't have it, zero out the risk. Where zero out the risk is not always acceptable or not always possible, especially when you're talking, warfighter networks. You're talking things where, if you have nodes go down, that is a loss of C5, right? Command control computer, all of that. You lose that, you lose your ability to communicate, then that can equate to lives lost, downrange. So uh, those are the kind of the hard choices. So that is where I kind of said, not to go on a tangent here, but that is how I got, okay, let me go ahead and formalize all the stuff that I've been doing innately. Thank you, Lance, by the way, because you're the one that really challenged me to do it. And I got started back then. They didn't have the Learn one. It was just the PWK. And I got hooked. And I tell you what, that was the most grueling 9 months of my life. I ate, slept, breathed, OSCP, everything. And it was rough because I remember I can't remember which video it was. I was watching a video. It might have been TJ Knowles or it might have been maybe TCM on his video. He said, if you're going to start your OSCP, first thing you need to do is apologize to your wife, your friends, your family, and your loved ones, because this will consume you for the next however many days or months until you get this exam. And it was so true, right? Going into work, doing work, labbing on the side, going through the manuals, going through the stuff, coming home, spending another 2, 3, 4 hours at it, going to sleep, waking up, rinse, wash, repeat. And at that time we had the 90-day, it was a 90-day clock, right? So we didn't have the year-long subscription that they have now, so you were even more under the gun. So every minute, every hour that you were awake, you were doing something. And then even if you weren't doing the offset stuff, right? So I failed my first exam, so I had like 30 days to redo my other one. I failed that one too by a technicality because I uploaded the wrong report. It wasn't a point thing. Yeah, so that's another story. But word of advice for those of you who are attempting OSCP: when they tell you, when you get your flags and you have enough score to pass, go to sleep. Don't immediately go into report and wrapping it up, because at that point you're going to be at 30 some hours and you're going to make a mistake. I zipped up. At the time, we had the two files. We had the lab report that you would do all the exercises for the 10 extra points, and then you have your exam report, right? I put the exam report, I zipped it up. I forgot to include the lab report. I zipped it up or RAR'd it, right? And I didn't do it for the exam. My exam didn't make it in. So when I hit submit, it was just my lab report for the 10 extra points completely missing. And I had the pass. I was dancing, I was celebrating. It was a hard fought. And because of a technicality, I wasn't paying attention. My sleep addled brain, just wasn't thinking straight, and I submitted it off. And within a minute I realized, oh shoot, I forgot to add in my actual exam report. um, so sleep, no matter what you do, sleep after you get your flags, and then wake up, then do your exam report, then submit it. So third time's the charm. Uh, but in between then, right, you're on cooldown, so you have to wait, right? So in there, I'm going through Hack the Box, I'm going through Vuln Hub, I'm going through, Proving Grounds was just really getting started, so it wasn't really much of an option for us at the time. But we were just consuming every bit of information that we could in the meantime. Um, which now I would say, hey, if you are planning your OSCP or something like that, go straight for the Learn One subscription, because it really is going to take you a year just to get comfortable with everything.
Yeah, I did an episode with um I forget what number it was, but that was kind of like a part of the conversation, how much it consumes your life. Like the OSCP sacrifices are real, and
Yeah.
it does take a lot of time, and it's definitely a commitment for sure. And then what you said about getting your flags first and then going to sleep. I just passed my OSWA like a few days ago, and I got enough flags to pass. And I was what I did was I got all of my screenshots, and I wrote the report because it was my fourth attempt. So by the time I had my fourth attempt, like I was pretty comfortable in the environment. So I actually got enough points to pass pretty early on that fourth attempt, and I wrote the report during the exam. I suppose the practice was watch me typing away, just typing the report the whole time. I bet because I got the flags pretty early, but even then, I had the whole report pretty much done, and I ended the exam. I went to bed, and I was like, I'm gonna reread this in the morning because I'm really tired and I don't want to turn it in now. And
Yeah.
then when you turn it in, like OffSec has instructions on how to do it. Just follow it to the letter.
Yes.
And nowadays there's no bonus points, so there is only one report for you to upload for OSCP,
Okay.
so you can't fall in that trap like you did, but you can still make a mistake because if you don't zip it with 7-zip, you have to use 7-zip now.
Yep.
If you don't zip it, or if you put a password on it, like they tell you not to put a
Yeah.
password on it. And it just there's a lot of rules with just the way the
Yeah.
file structure is. It's got to be your OSID dash
Yep.
OSCP. It's really
Or
particular. Like they
or
take that stuff seriously.
you zip up a draft copy of your report, not your actual report, right?
Yeah. Yep. So when you zip it up, make sure you extract it out and make sure it's the right file and literally quadruple check that because you
Oh
only
yeah,
get one upload.
for sure.
All right. Well, that's really good advice. And unfortunately, we're out of time. So before we end the show, I got to ask you the final question. Do you have any additional cybersecurity hot takes or hidden wisdom you'd like to share?
Oh, hot takes. Yeah. For me, and I know I'm going to get burned for this, but I don't think cybersecurity, entry level cybersecurity, is not necessarily an entry level field, right? I think that sometimes, 'cause, I am going through my master's program or my bachelor. When I was going through my bachelor's program, I was involved with my the cybersecurity clubs, right? TitanSec for SVC and the Pentest Club for St. Leo's. Sometimes I have seen where sometimes students would say, "Hey, I'm looking at a job, but oh, it's just a help desk job, or oh, it's just a sysad job." And I'm like, "What are you doing? Take those jobs." Oh, but they're not cybersecurity. I was like, "No, no, no, stop that." First of all, you know, I'm not one that's gonna say, "Oh, well, you have to go work at a help desk," but going to work at a help desk should not be something to snub or look down on, right? That is some of the best learning you're going to get, people wise, soft skill wise, and you're going to show that, like, not that you have to work your way up, but it gives you a good solid foundation to understand, all the ins and outs and intricacies of what it is that you're doing. Sometimes as pen testers, you're stuck in that auditing mode, or it's red teamers, you're stuck in that adversarial mode. Sometimes you don't understand that sometimes the blue team or the system owners have no choice but to do their operations like this because there's some kind of either financial restraints or some kind of limiting factors that you may not be aware of, and you kind of lose sight of what it is to be on the other side of the seat when you're on the other side of that table. So my thing is, hey, you know, I know people sometimes they want to they come out of college, they get their cybersecurity degree, and immediately they think, oh, I'm going to be a CISO. Slow your roll, buddy. You know, don't be. And a lot of them, and I think I fault academia to a bit here because they pump these kids up for 4 years. Oh, you're going to do this, you're going to do that, you're going to do that. No, you're not, right? I'm not going to hire a 22-year-old CISO that has never been through, that doesn't even know how to unlock an account, right? Or doesn't even know the ramifications of some of the decisions and policies he's going to be writing. So a lot of them hold out for that that better thing, and missing all the opportunities are just passing them by, where they can get those hard skills, where they can get that keyboard time and can get that time, sitting with the infrastructure team, the sysad team, the network team, and understand how it all comes into play. At which point now you become a better cybersecurity person in general because you understand the ramifications of your policies, or the kind of things that you want to lock down or you want to do, who's going to be affected by it.
That's really good advice. Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Definitely do not look down on those help desk jobs and those
Yeah.
system admin jobs because that's the key to the success, and it definitely benefits you in the long term for
Yep.
sure. So thanks for saying that. So Mike, where can the audience get a hold of you if they want to connect with you?
LinkedIn. My LinkedIn's there. It's open, so you can always reach me there. Hit me up. I'm on all the usual groups and boards and stuff like that. Seeing, I love listening to what the community is out there doing, researching topics, discussions, things like that. So LinkedIn is usually the best place to find me.
Perfect. And audience, LinkedIn is also the best place for me and my website, kyserclark.com. Audience, thank you so much for watching. Thanks for listening. If you haven't shared the show with a friend, that will help out the podcast tremendously. So do that if you haven't done that yet already. And hopefully I see you in the next episode. Until then, this is Kyser signing off.